Hi, my name is Hira Javed. I work at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, and I'm a user experience researcher within the design team as part of the digital operations department. I did my undergraduate degree in Bachelor's of Business Administration from Laurier, and my focus was marketing and consumer behavior. Going into that program, I thought I was going to do maybe something marketing related or accounting. I wasn't really sure. Probably marketing. In the first year, I remember taking some marketing course and I really enjoyed it. And then I took some consumer behavior classes. I knew that's what I was really interested in. That part of marketing really excited me is the behavioral elements of why people make decisions and how do you inspire them and the kind of stories we tell. So I remember thinking okay, that's kind of what I'm interested in. So once I graduated, I started working at PepsiCo Beverages doing analyst work. So I worked in the retail sales department where I did part account management, part retail sales analysis work for the drugstore accounts, so Shoppers Drug Mart, Pharma Plus, Idea Guardian, as well as Walmart as well. And it was a great experience because I think that's where it really developed my quantitative skills and this analytical skills as well. But I knew at the back of my mind, I knew this is not where my heart lies. I knew I needed a bit of change, and this was a great start, and I was learning a lot, getting a lot of recognition as well. But I knew it was time for a little bit of change. And knowing that I'm kind of a creative person, I decided that maybe number crunching is not really my thing. So that's when I was just kind of exploring different master's programs, and I came across the MDI program. And that was the first year it was being offered. So I quit my job. I applied for this program and I quit my job and ended up here. And it's been the most fantastic experience ever. I never regretted ever for a minute that I signed up for this. And it's been a great learning experience. So after I finished my MDI program, I ended up getting a job at CBC. So while I was doing the MDI program, the nature of the program is that it's very, interdisciplinary. You kind of have to drive it yourself, I think, based on what your interest is, especially being the first year of the program. It's kind of always difficult being the cohort. It's because you're all in this together and there's no example ahead of you to figure out what is at the end of this tunnel, right? So, after all the different courses that we were taking, we didn't have a course called User Experience Design at all, actually. But after going to a bunch of different industry events, reading a lot of books, I actually came across this book called The Man Who Lied to His Laptop. It's by Clifford Nass. And I remember reading that and just my mind was blown because he was talking about something called human-computer interaction. And I've never thought of that. A part of me, I always knew that I was interested in behavior and how people interact with them, with each other, as well as their technology. But I never knew there was a term for it. So that got me really excited, and I did a little bit of digging, and I learned about this whole new field of human-computer interaction, user experience design. So that's why I got a little bit excited about it and did a lot of self-studying. So I read a lot of blogs, I read a lot of books, went to industry events. One of the first user experience conferences that was being organized in the Waterloo region was Flexible. That was the first year they were hosting it, and a few friends and we decided that we wanted to be part of it. So we offered ourselves to help and volunteer and organize this, and we got to meet a lot of professionals in this space, and that's how I learned a lot about this discipline and decided that this is where I belong. So when I was graduating, a lot of our projects in the final semester were around user experience. I decided that's what I wanted to focus on. So my final master's project, I was working with this amazing team of friends. Yes, we became really good friends, and we're still really good friends. We were working. We did two projects basically because we were first really eager and excited, but also we wanted to learn a whole lot. We worked with a startup called Decision.io. Now they're called Bitsin, but now that was their first product, and Decision.io. And then we also did a big project with Google, doing some user experience research for their app called Shopper out of the states, and that was a fantastic experience to learn both sides of the spectrum. Where working in a small company where it's all hands on deck and you learn a whole lot, and you're doing multiple things, you're wearing multiple hats, and then working for a large, a giant like Google, where there's lots of great resources, so many amazing mentors, and you really get an understanding of how a space like that works and the different roles people play. So it was a fantastic learning experience to be doing these two projects simultaneously. And then once close to graduation time, I decided that maybe I should look around, see what is out there and start applying for different jobs, or consider a PhD maybe. For a moment I was actually thinking that I wanted to continue on because I loved school. But then I realized that the tech space is very practical. It requires a lot more industry experience, and I wanted to go out there and get going on building great experiences. So I decided that maybe it's time to go in the industry for now. And somehow I came across this job posting that CBC was hiring a junior information architect and usability specialist. Again, I'm like, I have an idea what this is, and I think based on all the stuff I've taught myself, I've learned, this could be interesting. So I ended up applying for the job, and I remember sitting in that interview, and they pulled up their website and said, so tell us what do you think about this, and give us a little bit of critique. And I was like, oh my god. So based on everything I knew, and based on what my initial gut reaction was, I did that on the spot heuristic evaluation and ended up getting a job in the next couple of days. And before you know it, it's been 4 years, and here I am. And my role is kind of unique, where I'm almost like an in-house consultant, where I support multiple different teams within our department as well as some teams outside of our department. So I would work with teams that are working on CBC News, so outside of our department, like CBC News, radio, kids, TV, entertainment, and sports. Yeah, so work with a variety of different content types and a variety of different teams who are creating products for a variety of different users. In my team, we have user experience designers, information architects, and there's me, the user experience researcher. So my role is to help teams make informed design decisions, basically. So ideally, I would be brought into the very early stages of the project, where they're just starting to figure out what is their user experience strategy, what is it that they're creating, who they're creating it for, and why they're creating it, and what is the ultimate value they're trying to provide. So that would be the ideal situation. So but typically right now, so that's starting to happen a little bit more, but typically I will be brought in when they're trying to evaluate their design decisions. So for example, either they have a paper prototype, the teams have, so I work closely with the designers and the information architects and the product owners. And then once they have something that they want to get tested or they want to get a usability eye on that, I will be pulled in. So whether I'm doing a heuristic evaluation and giving them my feedback on whether something meets usability guidelines or there's something that I see that needs to be improved, or whether they want input directly from their audience. So I will be brought in at that different stages. So whether they have a paper prototype or they have an interactive prototype or they actually have something live that they want to test, we would test with a variety of different products and different phases of the project itself. So that's where I would come in, is help and recruit participants for our research. I would conduct the research for these teams and share my findings and recommendations based on that. Another part of my job is to connect training and development in helping teams develop the capacity to conduct their own research. Especially now that we work in an agile process, the teams have to adopt that thinking of constantly iterating on their designs, and being the only UX researcher, that don't have a whole lot of capacity to take on larger projects. So we want to build that within the teams themselves. So part of my role is helping teams develop that understanding of how to do quick research, what does that entail, how to ask the right questions at the right time, and what are those smart questions that they should be asking in order to make those informed decisions. Because there's always numerous definitions of user experience, but I think to put it down simply, it's a series of interactions someone has with your experience. And it could be anything that's part of the entire ecosystem of your brand, really. So it's not just a digital interface that they're interacting with, but it's the customer experience, it's the service that they receive, it's any marketing material that they see. Everything's all encompassing part of that. So user experiences of how someone thinks and feels and acts when they're interacting with your experience and your brand, and the relationship they build with your brand itself. So in terms of asking what are the right questions, is the biggest question we're trying to ask is, what is a problem that we're trying to solve for our user? And what are the existing solutions that they have that they're trying to use? What is effective, what is not effective, and where can we add value? I think that's the biggest and probably the most important question we can ask is what is the value that we're creating for our user? the value that the user buys into. Basically, we can call something that's valuable, but in the eyes of the user, it might not be as valuable because they don't see the extra benefit of using your product or your experience compared to what their existing solution is to that problem. So in terms of conducting research at the very early stages, the discovery part of the project, you're trying to answer those larger strategy-based questions, because the questions that the teams are asking are all revolved around how do we form a vision and a strategy, and how do we go around achieving it. So they might be asking larger, broader questions of who our users are, what are their pain points, what is their journey in terms of trying to solve a problem, how do they relate to this problem, and where can we place ourselves within their lives to make some sort of an impact. As you move on further along the projects, where you've collected some of that information by going out and talking to your users, finding the people who are experiencing those problems, identifying the characteristics of those people, so you can better find the best suited users for your potential solution. Going out and talking to them, conducting user interviews, embedding yourself within their environment, doing some contextual inquiry, learning as much as you can about them and the context around them, and the different factors that impact them and the problem that they're experiencing and the solution that you're trying to create. So you gather a lot of data to really get a really good understanding of the context and the space that you're working in. As you move further along, and you have some sort of a physical form of the idea, whether a quick sketch or some concept, you can go out and start testing and validating those ideas and validating your assumptions, which is probably the most important part, right? I think one of the biggest challenges of doing this kind of exercise is calling out on the different assumptions that we have as we build experiences. I think someone who has an understanding of user experience and is trying to embed that thinking within the organization, you have to constantly remind everybody that we're not our users. And for an organization that has that UX maturity, people start to understand that very quickly and early on, which is why they bring in research early on in the process, so they can make those data-driven decisions as opposed to making decisions based on that gut feeling. Or based on that assumption. So as we move further along and the idea becomes a bit more solidified, you continue to do more of that iterative testing and research to fine-tune your product and your experience and ensure that first of all, not only are you taking care of any usability issues, because having good usability is just a basic expectation, right? You want to go above and beyond and create that delightful experience that resonates with people, and it's more than just being the basic expectation. So when you're doing that validation and testing, you're making sure that not only is your experience usable, but it's actually adding value and can play an important role in the user's life in some way. So CBC is an interesting place to be at because we have a larger CBC brand that Canadians resonate with, that plays an important role in their lives, and people feel very emotionally connected to it as a public broadcaster. But we also have sub-brands within the larger organization. So CBC Music has its own brand, sports, news, they have a very strong brand and they have a very strong following as well. So part of being that ambassador for the brand means connecting with not only the larger communications team, which sets up the guidelines for how do you interact with the audience and what kind of story are we telling, making sure that how I'm going out and projecting myself and being the ambassador, it's aligned with those guidelines and their vision of the brand. But then also when I'm doing a project specifically for a specific team, like for example CBC Sports or Music, working closely with their product owners and with their brand team to make sure that whenever we're trying to communicate, it's aligned with the tone and the voice and the personality of that brand as well. So it's working with both to make sure that it's all one cohesive image as we go in the field and talk to the audience. Okay, so a fresh example of a project from start to finish would be recently CBC Music relaunched their new website and currently the app as well. So I was fortunate enough to have been brought in earlier on in the process because of the relationship I had built with the product owner. When he first came on to the team, I introduced myself, told him what I did and how I can support their team, and based on that, the little bit of understanding of why user experience is important and why doing the early testing and validation is going to help him build a better product. So I was fortunate enough to be brought on earlier on in the process, And this was a unique project because it was in collaboration with CBC Music and EC Music together. So two larger organizations coming together, different work styles, different teams, different processes, different languages coming together. So it was a big, complex project, kind of high priority for the organization. So it was exciting to be part of that at that very early stage, to see how strategy is developed and how direction is, created, and who guides that process, and how do you work in that space where you have two big organizations kind of collaborating and working together. So it started off with looking at what is our current experience like, and what is working and what is not working. So doing some bit of a heuristic evaluation of our current existing experiences, and giving recommendations based on here's where we need to improve and here's what's working really well. The next step of the process is working closely with the designers on the team. So we had a designer on the English side and a French side working together, and I was supporting them in terms of what are your big questions that will help you move forward with your work. And then figuring out, okay, who do we go talk to? Who are the most ideal people that, who are our users that we should be talking to get the most valid information that we need, the answers to these important questions that they have. So we reached out to a variety of different mediums. One is knowing that we have a huge fan base. So reaching out to people through the CBC social media accounts, through Facebook and Twitter, to recruit participants, saying that, hey, we're working on this big redesign. We would love to get your feedback on a product that you feel closely attached to. So recruiting participants from those pools. And then we also have an existing list of people, larger CBC audience who have opted in to participate in research for us. So we wanted to make sure we have a balance of CBC music lovers as well as people who have no direct relationship with the brand, so we can get a good mix of perspectives. And then so we reached out to that list and letting people know that, hey, we're starting this big project. Would you like to be part of this pilot, where we like to get reach out to you for frequent feedback on a frequent basis. So when we had like a small group of almost like a beta group, we set this expectation that here's a big project, here's what we're trying to do, and we want to loop you in. We want them to feel invested in the project. We want them to feel part of it because it is their public broadcaster. And give them an opportunity to give their feedback as well as voice any concerns they have. Because anytime you do a major redesign, for the loyal user, it can be a bit of a shock, right? Of course, change is different and change is hard for everybody. But when you're so used to using something in a particular way, change, regardless if it's for the good, can be a bit of a shock. So you always want to prep your users ahead of time, especially when you're going through this major, change. So that was one strategy, is letting them know ahead of time that we're doing something like this, and slowly introducing them to that change, and making sure that they feel like they're part of that change. So once we started with the first iteration, we conducted usability testing in person and remotely, because one of the great opportunities and challenges with working at CBC is that our audience is entire Canada, right? So we conducted sessions in person, where I had users come into our office, show them around the building, give them a bit of tour, got them excited about the process, and showed them our mock-ups and perform some usability testing with them, which basically entails getting them to perform a series of tasks that people would normally perform, and watching and observing, and getting their feedback in terms of how they're actually interacting with the experience, and does it align with what the product creators are intending for them to use it as. And then for remotely, we connected with Canadians all over the country through Skype or Google Hangout or GoToMeeting, just any kind of web conferencing tool that they felt comfortable with, sharing our screens and then sharing our designs with them and getting feedback in that way. Sometimes, juggling different time zones and different hours, because, it has to be suited according to the user's participants' time schedule. So it's always a fun exercise when you're doing that, and you realize, wow, like we have, our stuff we make impacts people across the entire nation, and how they use it is very different, right? Somebody up north, how, the kind of challenges they feel, they encounter for connectivity, or somebody who's in an urban environment. So it's always fascinating, and you learn so much about people through an exercise like this. It also helps build empathy, right? Where it gives us the opportunity to get outside of our heads, get away from a project that you're so close to, and view it from the eyes of somebody else. And then we worked on multiple iterations, whatever we learned, and back to the team and shared it with everybody else. Something that we implemented as part of that learning and development and training aspect of teaching everybody the importance of doing this kind of work is sharing the video recordings of our testing, or inviting people to the live testing as well, so they can observe from a different room. And what that allowed us to do is to bridge that gap between the product users and creators, right? To help build that empathy of here are the people you're building these experiences for, because sometimes they actually never get a chance to interact with them at all, other than people, their family and friends who use those products as well. So that was a great learning experience for us. And then so recently they launched that, and before that the team, the social media team, as far as CBC Music, wrote a series of blog posts explaining the process of how we're doing it, all for the sake of transparency and helping again prep the user for this big change that was coming up and gathering that feedback along the way. So now that it's live and out in the field, we're getting lots of great feedback. We're also getting a lot of suggestions of things that need to be improved, right? Which is exactly how this process should go. Your users should feel like they have the ability to make a change, have their voices heard. Especially, I think, being a public broadcaster, that's really important for us to make sure that Canadians feel like this is, they have the ability to drive change and they have the ability to impact experiences that they're using, that they're also investing in as well. In order to convert all these insights into actionable data, you need to make sure that you're aligned on, right at the beginning of the process, where you're creating your test plan, you're setting your objectives for this research. You want to get alignment with, your stakeholders, the product owners that you're working with, everybody involved, to make sure that here's the big question that we're asking, here's what we're trying to investigate, and here's how we're going to actually answer these questions. So if you get alignment at that phase, when you collect all this data, then you try to find the insights that answer those questions directly. And then so you come up with the key insights that based on what you learn, and use a lot of evidence to support that, whether it means using user quotes, showing videos, and a great example of actually letting them observe the sessions and get that understanding firsthand of how people are interacting with the products, and get those answers right directly from the user instead of getting filtered through me. So there's a variety of different ways that you can get that buy-in. It all comes down to making sure that everybody understand what is it that we set out to learn. Here's what we learned from that, and what does this mean? Basically, it's that translation part. Translating that data to actionable items is where the key pieces, and you do that by trying to figure out that what are we inferring from the data that we're receiving. Does it answer the question? Does it validate or invalidate our hypothesis? What kind of direction can this lead us to next? Showing something like user journey would show, based on the qualitative work that we did, here's how we mapped out people's movement throughout the experience. I think by showing something like that, that's a good way for them to understand that we had a certain funnel or something in mind, and something like a user journey is a visual way of representing how people move within the experience, and the pain points to come across, the decision points that they make, and where we have the opportunity to make an impact in their entire experience. So that's one method. One thing that I love adding in my presentations and in any kind of document I'm sharing is speech bubbles. It seems pretty simple, but actually I think it adds a lot of context for people. Anybody who's sitting in the room trying to make sense of this data that we've collected, adding speech bubbles, using direct quotes from audience, it helps kind of humanize the data that we get. So they've already got lots of numbers. You back it up by this many people said this, or this is how long it took people to complete this task. But when you add a direct quote from somebody, it gives people a better understanding of the thought process of that user, what they're thinking, and it adds a human element to all this new information that they're learning, and they tend to remember more of that. So next time you meet up, you're trying to make a decision going forward, you can remember. There's situations when the product owner or the designers will recall, remember that person said this. This is what they meant. So again, it kind of helps humanize that process in some way. Qualitative and quantitative need to work together to tell a better story. I should tell a full story, to be honest, because the quantitative data will give you, it's more diagnostic, right? It's this is happening, what is happening. The qualitative data will tell you the why, why this is happening. It will allow you to dig deeper and figure out the actual root cause of the problem or the key insight. So collectively together, they form a stronger story, for sure. So an example of a project where I was brought in a little bit late, or we saw a need to help the team understand why the importance of bringing user experience, thinking ahead of time, and making the right decisions would be the recent Olympics that just happened. So in Rio. So being the primary broadcaster, the official broadcaster of the Olympics, we realized that obviously Canadians are experiencing the Olympics on a variety of different mediums, not only just the traditional mediums through TV and radio, but also online as well. And online through the website, through apps, numerous different phones that people are using. So it's a huge experience of experiences that we control, our apps and website, but also socially as well on other platforms where content exists as well. So we were brought in a little late because the decisions of how this is going to be run was made way earlier on, and we decided to go with a third-party product, a vendor who specializes in delivering these Olympic experiences because that is their specialty. They know how to collect all this data that is coming in from the Olympics. So imagine all the different sports that are being, all the different sports and events that happen, numerous different, all the different countries that participate, all the different athletes are there, the stats, the scores. So there's lots of data being that is floating around. So that company really specializes in consolidating all that and presenting it, and so they have this white label product that that we decided to go with. After as we got closer to the Olympics, we realized that there's a lot of things that are missing from that experience, or that haven't been designed for our audience. Knowing that our audience are trying to consume a lot of video, we have a different strategy of what is it that we're trying to promote. Is it the video that we're promoting? We're trying to promote Canadian athletes. So there's different needs for our audience, and we quickly realized that the out-of-the-box third-party platform wasn't best suited for the experience that we wanted to create, that we know would be ideal for Canadians, especially because we didn't involve Canadians at all in that experience, right? So knowing that it was already kind of too late, what we did is that while the Olympics were on for that 2 and a half weeks, we conducted a lot of research and testing during that time, especially when events were live, because we wanted to see how people are consuming it while the Olympics are on, and what is the behavior, we wanted to understand what is the Olympic consumer like right now, just starting off with that. So we began with conducting a lot of interviews with Canadians across the entire country, either remotely or in person, or giving a phone call, or through web conferencing, in whatever way we could connect with them while the events were on. And we learned a lot of stuff. We learned a lot, especially in the different behaviors that people exhibit while the Olympics are on. That some people have, are kind of passive consumers, where they like to be part of the hype. They like to feel like they feel a sense of national pride because they want to support the Canadian athletes. They want to be part of the water cooler talk, so they like to know what's going on, but they consume it in a very passive way. Whereas we have these really active super fans who schedule their entire life around the Olympics. So they'll clear out the calendar, or they make sure that they catch up on what's going on, and they actively participate in the everyday happenings of the Olympics. So those were two main prominent behaviors that came out of that initial work. Even after talking to at least 10-15 people, we saw the pattern emerge. And then the next part of that research, we conducted some usability testing on the existing experience that we had launched, to find out that using this third-party platform, what worked and what didn't work. And if we were to, for the next few Olympics that CBC has the rights for as well, what can we change? And, is there something that is limiting as part of this experience? So we conducted usability testing to figure out what was working, what wasn't working, and we, based on the findings that we got from the first round of research of doing the interview, we tried to recruit people who fit those kind of categories, right? The super active super fans, and then the passive users of passive consumers of the Olympic experience, to see if there's a difference in how they consume the Olympic experience. And then we learned a whole lot. So by doing that kind of exercise, we were not only able to identify, who is it that we're serving, who are your audiences, what is it that they value, what motivates them to consume the Olympic experience, what inspires them. We were also able to identify, here's what worked really well with this third-party tool, and here's what was limiting, and here's how we can improve it. So the upcoming next Olympics, we can help inform those decisions that are coming up. One is, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think if you are not continuously pushing yourself and putting yourself in situations that make you a little nervous, that scare you a little, but also excite you, you're not growing. So you have to look out for those opportunities where you can put yourself in that situation and be okay with that, and knowing that this is a path through growth, right? When you have that feeling in your stomach, like something like you're scared out of your mind, but something amazing is going to happen, that's the feeling you follow and you go for it. Second is not being afraid to take risks. I think once you become okay with status quo, you put yourself in danger by just becoming irrelevant. So being okay with taking calculated risk, right? It's measuring that. What is is it worth taking that risk? What is the impact going to be, and what will I get out of it? So being okay with that. That there are times where you want to slow down, but there are times where you actually want to jump in and take big risks, and that's where again you do a lot of growing. Third, I think, is build relationships, not connections. I think when you're in school, especially coming from that business school background, and when you're in school and trying to get into industry, there's this pressure to build your network, right? There's this pressure to go schmooze and go to all these networking events, collect business cards, and do all that stuff. But I would say build relationships. Those will last you longer. Take the moment to get to know people, learn their stories, appreciate them, their time that they invest in you, and just even talking to you, sharing their knowledge and expertise, and value them as people as opposed to people, as opposed to business cards in your, that you collect, and that will go a long way. Because at the end of the day, it's more about the role we play in people's lives that really impacts who we are as a person too. So yeah, focus on relationship building. I love learning. That's what motivates me. I love finding new things. I love discovering new things. I'm always fascinated by humans. We're amazing creatures. We're so complex. We're so interesting. That's what excites me. I think that's why I decided to focus in user experience research. It's because you're constantly, trying to understand how people not only interact with others, with their environment, the impact that technology has in their lives, and what helps them grow, what helps them motivate too. So I think this constant, drive to learn and grow and understand people and discover new things, that's what keeps me going.